You're listening to Investify, preaching financial independence and assisting investors to achieve a more flexible and free lifestyle through smart financial planning and real estate investing. If leaving the corporate world and jumping into this thriving industry is what you desire, tune in and listen to stories of like-minded individuals who made the leap to financial independence. Equip yourself with the right tips and tricks to start your real estate journey, making active or passive ventures that are highly profitable and rewarding. Here are your hosts, Craig Kurlop and Ziana McIntyre.
What's going on, everyone? You are listening to Investify. My name is Craig Kurlop, aka the Fi Guy, and I'm here with my co-host Z Money. How you doing today, Z?
I am doing fantastic. I am in full summer vibes, wearing a dress that is far too short and just loving the warm weather. How about you, Craig? What are you wearing?
This is where we're going, huh?
Yep, it's that kind of day.
I'm wearing khakis.
Nice.
Just kidding. I'm actually not wearing khakis. I'm wearing shorts. I just try to be like
Dude,
Jake from State
Farm. Were you not
Farm.
wearing that shirt yesterday? That house hacking shirt? I'm just going to call you out.
I have like 5
Or do you just
shirts.
have a bunch of these? Okay.
Yeah, I have like
You're
5
like
of them.
Steve Jobs right now. You're just like, I'll just wear my house hacking shirt every day with like a pair of jeans. So that'll be my wardrobe.
That's it. That's my uniform.
Okay, love it. Well, we have a really, really great guest today. I don't know why, but maybe it's just because she's into Airbnb that I love this so much. It is a great episode. We have Amberly Grant. She is a die-hard FI person and an Airbnber, real estate investor, and she's still fairly new to the game. She's just been in it since 2019, so it's amazing to see what people are able to accomplish in just a couple short years. So definitely stay tuned to see what she's got to offer.
Amberly, welcome to the show. It's so good to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm excellent. It's so nice to see your face again.
Yeah, it's been a minute. I think it's probably been since FinCon, which is like, shoot, it's like almost a year ago at this point. What, 9 months ago or 8 months ago?
Correct.
Crazy. Yeah, and so I know you have a lot of things happening in your life since then, but let's take it way, way back since before the last time we saw each other to when you first heard about financial independence. Tell us, how did you get started?
Yeah, I've always been a frugal person. So my whole life, I've been curious about investing and frugality. I told my mom when I was like 13 years old that I'd be a millionaire one day. And this is coming from a family who didn't have much. So she was just like, yes, of course you will. And specifically, I had always lived my life in a FI way. And then in 2015, I was actually at community college and hanging out in the lobby. And I don't know how I came across Mr. Money Mustache Pete's blog. And of course, just like everyone does with his blog, I found it and I was like, oh my gosh, there's these people out there who are like me. This is really exciting. And read it in the chairs at the Community College of Denver, like just sitting there, like going through each blog from the very beginning and reading every single one over, I don't know how many month period. And then that was when I learned about FIRE. And that's like a concept that I had been working towards, but it turns out there are other people like me.
So what got you to like stumble into Pete's blog, into Mr. Money Mustache? Was it just like a Google search or?
You know, that's a great question. I actually cannot remember why I stumbled over him specifically. I think someone told me about it, and that must have been what the case was, but I don't actually remember how I came across it. I just somehow found it.
Okay, so I've read Pete's blog too, and it's one of those blogs where you almost, once you start, it's like a really good movie or a really good book. You just like can't stop. You just go to blog after blog after blog, and then you realize you see the comments and there's like people that agree, and you kind of like, it's a really easy slippery slope into the financial independence rabbit hole. And so what year did you say this was when you discovered?
2015.
2015. Okay, and so you discovered Pete's thing. You're on this track to financial independence. What happens next?
Yeah. Well, one thing too that I stood out about his blog, which is so silly, but I'm from Ottawa, Canada, and he had spent time in Ottawa, Canada, and then he was in Longmont and I was in Denver, and I was like, oh, fellow Canadian, maybe we could be friends one day.
Yeah.
I love that. I heard the about and I was like, ooh, I think she's Canadian, but I don't want to like just shout it out. So there it goes.
Oh yeah. I feel like all Canadians are just super friendly. They know each other, right? All Canadians know each other. That's the thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
We're not all
yeah.
related, but we all know each other.
Yeah, that's Alabama. They're all related. Canada, you all know each other. Got it. Cool. Yep. So I guess like you're kind of getting involved in this community. Like, do you just start interacting on the forums, or how do you get involved?
Okay, well, I have a bit of a unique journey in the sense that I've never read any other blog, not one other, of the Phi Space. I have not listened to one podcast of the Phi Space besides like prepping for interviews for like you guys and Carl's podcast. And so I actually delved into this Phi Space via like in-person meetups. So I found someone had told me about the Mr. Money Mustache Facebook community as well as the Choose Phi Denver community. And so then I started going to in-person meetups there and making friends, and then started my own little real estate investing club. And so I did that in Denver, and then from there it just kind of started growing my like network of people in the Phi community in Denver specifically. And then I started online.
So I just want to highlight here how important meetups are. I mean, I think it's so great that instead of just being like one of the internet creepers stalking around, you were like, I'm going to go meet these people and like get into the community. And Craig and I both run meetups, and I just think it's such an integral part of like, some people learn by reading, some people learn by hearing other people's stories and getting inspired, and some people are learning by doing. So you kind of just need to get out there and get immersed with that group, because I think it will get you a little more momentum if you're really starting out on your own. So I think that's awesome.
Agreed.
Yeah. Meetups, I think, one thing I think that's really valuable about meetups is you see, it becomes real. Right, you see somebody that's maybe 1 or 2 steps ahead of you and has a couple properties, and you're like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And in fact, I can just probably get their number and ask them questions along the way, and they're more than happy to help. Right, oftentimes that's the case. And so meetups are just, I think that was an integral part of my success too. And it's kind of funny that you almost went into this like the old-fashioned way, right? Like, meetups aren't so old-fashioned, but going out and meeting people in person certainly is. And so tell us a little bit about that, about, what was your goal there? Was it just to meet people, or did you have this kind of thought in mind that you wanted to build something?
So I had no idea what my path would be. Like I had no idea, of course, we'll find out I'm into real estate and other things, but I, at that time, wasn't making much money. So when I'm talking to people who are engineers at these meetup groups, I was like, whoa, this is kind of freaky. I have my own business. I made very little money. But I had done so much with my money to be able to travel and save it and, again, be frugal but not increase my income. So going to these meetups to me was just to meet other like-minded folks who like to bike places, who like to learn about investing, even though I couldn't invest because I didn't actually have money to invest. Make friends with, again, people who wanted to have like real conversations about finances.
Yeah, and so I guess I want to dig into a little bit about what was your job, like what business did you have, and how much money were you making? Just because you said not a lot, but that could be relative.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's not a lot. So I actually when I moved to Denver, and the year and a half before that, I actually owned a nutrition consulting company. So I worked with luxury apartment buildings in Denver, Colorado, and did film screenings, workshops, cooking classes in like their kitchens. I also started a side business where I would prepare foods and deliver it to people's fridges for lunches and dinners every day. So the dinner for the night and then the lunch for the next day. And so I did that 5 days a week. And I literally made like $12,000 a year doing that. So not very much.
Yeah, that is the definition of not a lot. Mm-hmm. And so
I don't know, but it's sad because it's such a like important thing, She's like helping bring nutrition into the world, and it's like, why are the important jobs not paid for? I don't know.
Yeah, we could dig into that, but that would probably be a whole other podcast on its own.
Yeah, I know.
I think that's So so you're making $12,000 a year, and you also mentioned that you had kind of creative ways to save, and you were able to travel and all that. And so, for all the people that are listening, you can still be making 50, 60, $100,000 a year and still implement some of Amberly's strategies that she's about to tell us about how to actually save. And so what were some of those things that you did?
Yeah, and so I should say I also had two others. Like, I worked for another. I guess no. So when I stopped my business at one point, and then I started working when I was in school, and so that's when I got into the FI track. And at that point, I was making an average of like 15 to 20 a year. So still not very much, but a little bit
Almost
more
double.
that helped to. Yeah, I know, almost double. Great. So I'd worked 3 jobs to make that at that point. But anyhow, when I was making between, let's say, $13,000 to $20,000 a year, I checked my Social Security, and I had made an average up until 2017 of $15,000 a year. So let's just say that's the average of what I was making. I traveled the world. I was really lucky because I lived in a house in Denver that the lady had decided not to raise rent if she had good people living there, which is also part of like my landlord philosophy, is that if you have good tenants, you should do what you can for them. And so my rent at that time in Denver, Colorado, in downtown Denver, like in Capitol Hill, was only $400 a month, plus utilities. So I was only paying $450 a month. It raised one time in the 10 years I lived there. And then I traveled the world by finding really cheap tickets on Scott's Cheap Flights and having a flexible schedule. And then I would go for like a month or 2 at a time. So if I would go overseas, I would take time to actually like rent a whole apartment for a certain amount of time and then do that. So like little things like that. And then I cook all my food at home. I cut my own hair, did my own nails. And so I really took pleasure in the simple things in life and then doing things for myself, which of course helped me along my journey to FI, because when you are in real estate, if you can do a lot of things yourself, you can make a lot of money, not having to contract things out. So I just got a really great work ethic in regards to figuring things out and doing them myself.
So how did you get into the idea that real estate was going to be your path? Because with financial independence, most people just talk about index funds, right? So they have this like goal and they want to get that much money into funds. But if you're in it for a little while, you start to realize, well, wow, real estate's a lot faster than that. So I'm kind of curious where that idea came from.
Yeah, I was lucky. So I finally went to university after I got rid of my business. Turns out Blue Apron is now a $1 billion industry, and maybe I should have stuck with it. I went to business school to learn how to run my business, and I ended up graduating and starting to work as a project manager for a company. And in that time, I started making $50,000. And that was like, holy moly, the most amount of money like my family has ever made, that I've ever made in my life. And it was pretty life-changing. And of course, if I'm living off of literally $12,000 a year, it means I can save a bunch of it. So that's what I did. And I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I started investing in index funds at that point. So I literally went from like zero to starting to invest. And real estate started to creep into my mind. And the reason being was more curiosity. I've always been curious about real estate, not on any plan to, accelerate my plan to like my path to FI. Turns out that's a really good way of doing it. But in the beginning, it literally was, I've always wanted to run a bed and breakfast my whole life. It's just been something I've wanted to do. I've always wanted to lower my living costs. Like I've lived in the cheapest places around the world always. So I wanted to do that with my own property. And so these types of things were really appealing to me and not paying my own mortgage. And so that's where that seed was planted there.
So it seems like you figured out the formula, right? There's really one formula that makes you achieve financial independence very quickly, right? It's spend as little as you can, make as much as you can, and invest that difference to make that gap as large as you can. And so I'm not sure if you knew that in the beginning. You probably did, but maybe you couldn't articulate it. But clearly you knew what you were doing. And so, and I think, when you have your first $5,000, $10,000, it makes sense to put it in index funds, and it makes sense to put it somewhere where you can still make a return over the next year or two as you're saving up for that first real estate investment. Because $30, $40, $50,000 is what you kind of need these days to get started, even in a house hack. And that might take you a couple of years to start to, to save up. And so that's exactly what I did too. Maybe that's why I like it so much. And so you got into real estate, not for the reasons of achieving financial independence quicker, but yeah, let's dive into that for real deal.
The for real deal.
All right. So tell us about that first property. When did you buy it? How much did you buy it for? All the juicy numbers.
Oh yeah, this one I was a learning opportunity. So I had mentioned that I had started working for a real company and I had hit 2 year, no, I didn't even hit 2 years at that point. I was a year and a half into the job and my partner and I decided we wanted to move in together, even if that wasn't necessarily the right decision. And I had decided that if we were going to spend money on an apartment, we may as well go and look into buying a house. I had a bunch of money saved from working a year and a half in a job with more money than I'd ever seen before. And so I figured it was a good time to invest it into a real estate property. And like that idea in the back of my head of, if I were to do this, I want to do this as an income producing property so that when I'm looking at places, I want to have either some sort of walkout basement or be able to like create an ADU or something on the property where I'm not the only person living there. But because my partner and I were moving in together, we didn't want to live with someone. So we wanted a separate space. I also have some weird criteria of like, I want natural light because I never want anyone to live in a place that's like terribly dark. So in February of 2019, we finally purchased our first property together. So I put in $25,000, he put in $25,000, and his mom actually invested so that we could get to 20% because I thought that was really important back then. And maybe it was, but I learned now it's, you can do other things here. The property was in Denver, Colorado, and it cost $505,000, which I definitely overpaid for, which is one thing I didn't know until months later.
Okay, so I'm kind of curious as to why did you think that 20 or 25% down was the way to go?
Yeah, great question. So the kind of the rule of thumb that always floats in the real estate community, like not in the real estate investing community, but in like buying your first house, is that you should hit 20% so that you have a bit of buffer in case something happens with housing prices and you're not underwater on your property. So the other thing is PMI. So the mortgage insurance gets applied if you're under 20%. And I didn't know enough back then to run the numbers to see if it made sense to put in, thousands of dollars more or just take the monthly hit and then maybe the house will appreciate or you put some improvements on it. So I didn't know any of that back then. What I really focused on learning was all about the loan application and how much I knew that the numbers for the loan were really important. So that's what I focused all my attention on, not like future value of the property and what I could do with it in the future if I didn't put this money down.
I'm curious about overpaying. So that's such an interesting concept because I think a lot of people think they're overpaying now. And I think for sure people last year thought they were overpaying. And then all of a sudden everything went up another 100 grand or so. So how do we really measure that? And what makes you feel like you overpay?
You do it by comps in the area. And it turns out my real estate agent was like, we were his third deal and we didn't know this. He didn't know how to pull comps properly. He pulled the same property from the same investors and the same GC down the street and didn't actually compare to other things in the area that weren't selling from the exact same company. And so it turns out that although I paid $505,000, what really would have been an appropriate price to pay was about $485,000. So when I had finally months later settled down and actually looked at what was going on in the market, I realized that we overpaid. And I can tell you this because I made friends with the GC who did the property that I bought. I bought a turnkey property. And he told me that the other properties that turns out were my comps, and I didn't realize that till later, were the most that they had ever made because they just went shot for the moon for pricing and they got it. So no matter what, overpaying only means that it's the idea that I didn't get as much maybe value, but actually it's $20,000. I made that in an Airbnb in a year, so who cares? And I was willing to pay it. They were willing to sell it for it. That's the right price.
And there's your value in having a good real estate agent. Right.
100%.
But no, I mean, I think the deal itself, right? And so, you mentioned that it was a turnkey deal, right? And you wanted something pretty specific with natural light and a unit downstairs and all that. And so you found it. Maybe that's why you were good with overpaying. But I guess, like, why did you go the turnkey route versus doing all the work in the rehab and, in the sweat equity route?
I would have loved to do that route, but my partner at the time did not want to, like 100% adamant against it. And actually the basement in our place is a walkout basement, and natural light, really great place, but it wasn't actually set up as an Airbnb or any type of, sorry, I should say like a short-term rental or any actually, like it wasn't set up for someone to live down there. So that was part of our contract with the GC. So it worked out really well where we had them install like a sink and countertops and things like that matched the rest of the house. So that was really nice. But honestly, I would have done it and he didn't want to.
Wow. So you had, after you went under contract, you had the contractor go in and install a sink and install a second kitchen there while you were under contract?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, wow. Well, that makes the house a little bit more valuable, right?
Oh yeah, totally. Yep, exactly. Yeah. And we got a bunch of stuff. So it worked out really well. But like when I ran the numbers months later, I was like, oh, my real estate agent didn't know what he was doing. And I learned this years later when I had to work with him again.
Yeah, no, so that's amazing.
You worked with him again?
You worked with him again?
That's a story for my second deal.
Yes, we have.
Oh, good! I can't wait.
We have to get into that. But before we go into the second one, let's finish up the first one real quick, because I do want to just mention that, and you kind of are proving this right now, is that everything is negotiable, right? So when you go under contract with someone, everything is negotiable between the price and the terms and what they have to do and what they can't do. You can negotiate that, like you must wear a shirt that says "I love Sienna" at closing, right? Like everything is negotiable. And so make sure you just know what is in the contract, and that, again, try to make things work.
Hey guys, if you're thinking about becoming a real estate agent like us, you might want to go to Kaplan. That's where I got my license, and I found that they made all this really dull information actually kind of interesting and very memorable. So if you're looking at getting your license, see if they have your state. They cover a lot of states, but not all of them. And if you want to get a little discount, use our code INVEST2. So the word invest and the number 2. Thanks, guys.
Amberly, let's dig in a little bit into the numbers. So you said you bought it at 505. What was the mortgage payment? What were you getting for Airbnb rent? Tell us those juicy details.
Okay, so I bought in February of 2019 at 505 at a 4.5% interest rate. The cool thing about when I bought the place is I got a first-time home buyer's credit. We decided I'd be the only person on the loan so that we could qualify for for some credits from Chase, specifically we worked with. My work also said that if I worked with Chase, they would give me like $2,000. And then, of course, Chase Sapphire Preferred gives you like $800 if you go through a mortgage with Chase. And I had the card as well. So that worked out really well. I had almost $8,000 in credits. And because it was a first-time home buyer thing, I could apply the credits to the down payment. So normally, from my understanding, a lot of times with financing with credits, you can't get it into the actual, like you can't lower the property value with the down payment. You can only cover like closing costs. And so they were able to cover essentially, I ended up paying like $497 for the property out of pocket, even though it sold for $505 from all those great little pieces. So my interest rate was really high because really high, I say, in comparison to what I've refinanced to, because at that time, that's just what the going rate for interest rates were. It was kind of in that weird spike where everything was really, was higher than it had been for years, which was fine. And I did a 15-year loan because I also thought, from conventional wisdom, pay down your house first. Like that's a really important thing to pay down quickly, which it turns out if the interest rate is so low, that's a terrible idea. So that's what I originally did. The first payments were like $2,500 a month, I think it was, for the first few months. And then I refinanced it because interest rates started coming down and I realized like we didn't need a 15-year loan. So I refinanced it in July. The ROI on that was like 1 month because I had like basically zero closing costs on it. So it was a no-brainer. I got it down to 3.25. And I think at that point I did a 20-year, maybe a 30-year loan. I can't remember that one. So then all of a sudden the payments were even less. So I think at that point we'd gotten the payments down to like $2,100 a month. I refied a third time, but that's kind of after another part of the story, which is my partner and I broke up. So I had this house with someone that we were deciding that we were no longer going to be partnership with. He and his mother combined had put, and a gift to me, had been about $80,000 into our house, and I had only put in essentially 25 grand. So now I had to decide if I was keeping this house, and we had done some Airbnb at that point. And so I figured Airbnb covers a mortgage. This is a good investment. Let's do this. And this is in March of 2020.
Ooh, sounds like the timing was good. Yeah.
Yeah, really good timing to take on an entire mortgage by yourself and pay $80,000 to the people who invested in your property so you can take it over. So I was running Airbnbs, being like, okay, confident. I had all this, I had some extra money and I pulled some money out and was paying them, had agreed in February, I'd pay them the $80,000 in March. And then of course, March, 11th or whatever the date is of, the market hitting the bottom, Airbnb specifically canceled all reservations for 2.5 months after that and refunded all guests, which is a great idea because we were in a pandemic, terrible for hosts, especially someone like me who just took on every part of the expense of the house by myself. So that was a bit of a roller coaster for me in that first deal. And again, a learning opportunity for me in regards to what to do next.
Yeah. So my question there is, you bought the property in February 2019, your partner and you split up in, let's just say a year later in February 2020. And the property must have appreciated at that point, right? And so did you just pay him the $80,000 they put in, or was there any sort of, did you give him a little bit more than that for some of the appreciation of when you both owned it?
Good question. So actually, before we bought the place, I am an A-type personality person in the sense that I like to have things figured out and structured. So we'd already had an agreement that if we were to break up or someone were to die, who owns things, right? If his mom dies, we get 50-50 of her investment in our property. If he dies, I get his half. If I die, they can, my half might go to my sister or whatever it might be, then, or they pay her out. If we had broken up within a year, we broke up in October of 2019. So actually, it hadn't even been a year, so it was 8 months later. We would give the down payment back without any appreciation because we didn't want to do an appraisal and weren't sure if things were going to appreciate that much at that time. And so we just did down payments, and that was our agreement for the first year of life with the house. And the cool thing is neither of us paid a mortgage for basically from June 1, I think it was, when we started renting out the basement to a friend for a couple weeks, and then Airbnb'd it. We hadn't paid more than $200 towards a mortgage in a year, so it was kind of nice for him.
Wow. So I think that goes to show you, right? Make sure if you have partnerships with somebody, even if it is your spouse or your significant other, write that stuff down, right? It's the hard conversations to have if someone dies or if we break up, or no one likes to talk about that stuff, but that really saved you in this situation. And you would have learned that lesson the hard way had you not have had those written up.
And just to add that those conversations are so much easier to have when there's nothing at stake, when you're just excited and you're going into the house and everything's cool. It's definitely a lot harder to negotiate all that when you're breaking up. So at least you could just look at the form and be like, this is what we agreed to, and there's no argument there. So
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great.
So it sounds like you were making, at least covering your mortgage with that Airbnb downstairs. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, we were just covering our mortgage at that time.
Okay, and so look at that, right? You have a place to yourself. You're living rent free in a really nice up and coming part of Denver, and so win, 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 win. Right. And so, sure, you paid $20,000 over, right? But you made that back at least within a year. And curious, as today, we're recording this in June 2022, rough estimate, ballpark, what do you think that property is worth?
I know I did a HELOC last year and it was worth $45,000 more than I paid for it. So that was at $550,000. So my assumption is probably around $570,000. My neighborhood is blown up. So I actually have no idea what it's worth. And every day there's so much new construction. But yeah, probably around 570.
Yeah, I wouldn't
I
be
suspect
surprised.
more.
Yeah, I was just gonna say
Yeah.
that. I was like, I bet you it's worth more than that.
Yeah.
But even if it is worth 570, right? It's like, do you really care? You're paying $20,000 over at closing when if you're planning to hold out for the long term, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars of difference. You're not going to remember the 10 or 20 grand more you paid for it. So, yeah, still a great decision. Z, do you have anything to add there?
Oh, I thought I did, but no. I just decided to fix my hair instead.
Memories fleeting. Your hair looks great, by the way.
Thank you. Yes.
I'd say the $20,000 over was almost like a lesson in like who your real estate agent is matters. Like you said that, right? It was kind of like a quip, right? But that is the number one lesson I learned from that first deal is it really matters to have someone who knows what your goals are and is on the same page as you and has done. You can give new agents a try. That's not a problem, but they better know what they're doing or have someone they can turn to and aren't cocky, which was what my guy was. And then he started working with the seller after the deal happened and kept trying to like tell me everything's a handshake. It's fine, Amberly. Don't put it in the contract. We don't need that. So it was just all around unprofessional in certain ways. And then we'll talk how I sort of worked with him again later.
Hey everyone, big news. Investify has now partnered with Rent Ready. And yes, we've partnered with Rent Ready because that is the software system that both me and Ziana use to do property management for our rental properties. It makes things super easy. We can send applications, get background checks and credit checks. Tenants, when they come in, can pay rent automatically through there. They can submit maintenance requests, do everything you need to do for property management all in one place. That's why Rent Ready is the thing that we've done. I've been using them for years now. And that's why we reached out to them for a relationship on the show. And so again, super excited to have them on board. If you go to rentready.com and use the code Investify, you'll get 50% off your first 6 months. That's right. 50% off your first 6 months. If you go to rentready.com, sign up and use the coupon code INVEST2FI. And can't wait to see you there. Let us know, hit us up on Instagram, hit us up on wherever, and let us know what you think of Rent Ready. Because again, I think it's an amazing software. I use it all the time. You can access it from your phone. Amazing stuff. So thanks so much. And let's get back to the episode.
So I just want to go over one thing because I'm an Airbnb person too, right? And so I had that big experience of like everything shut off during COVID for a little while. And then it was better than ever. But I think just nobody knew what was going to happen. And so what kind of pivot did you do? Because I saw a lot of hosts being super creative to get their spaces filled. So what happened for you?
Yeah. So March of 2020, I think we were able to essentially continue with our Airbnbs until like the end of March. So my idea is I've always run numbers for long-term and short-term and medium-term place, like what can my place make? And my places always make money above and beyond my mortgage and all of my payments with long-term renters in both of my parts of my property, not just short-term. So short-term is like a really nice above and beyond, and rules change. So I make sure that I don't have to all of a sudden sell a bunch of stuff because the rules have changed. So when Airbnb went to zero, and they were no longer allowing new bookings to happen in Denver, or they were, but you could get your money back and no one was actually booking. I was going to go through for nurse rentals. I had already had my place on Furnished Finder. And so that was my next step, was to do a 3-month nurse rental and even like eat a month, if I didn't find someone, but at least having it open. What actually happened was I have a good friend who was the first person to ever rent out my Airbnb that I found on a 5 forum. And it wasn't an Airbnb back then. It was just my basement. And his wife was going through cancer treatment. So he found out, because I had been doing these live education classes on Facebook, and he found out that my Airbnb was empty, didn't have money, and they found out she had a brain tumor. And so they, like, that day called me as she was getting ambulanced from Crested Butte to Denver, saying, like, can we rent your place for the next 3 months? Like, same price as before, or, like, can we do the same arrangement we had last summer when she was getting cancer treatment back then? And can we show up tonight? And that's how I pivoted. My friend stayed there for 4 months. I got to hang out with them, and it was really a huge win-win-win for us.
Yeah, one of the things I love about owning properties, is, especially furnished rentals, is that you can really help people with them. It's like, yeah, 90% of the time you're charging as much money as you can get, top of the market, whatever. But then there's these times where you have a friend coming to town, or we had some fire evacuations here in Boulder. Like, there have been things that come up where you're like, I make so much money on this place, I can rent it for cheap for a little while, and I can help somebody out. And so it just feels really good to have those levers that you can pull when you are frugal and when you have properties at your disposal.
Well,
Oh, let's get into the second deal because we want to hear about that agent.
I want to hear the gossip. All right, Amberly, get lead. All right, so
Give us the tea.
Give us the deets of the second deal. When did you buy it? What was it for? Give us all the juicies.
Yeah. So my first property is going well. I am Airbnb it because now it's no, Airbnb hadn't quite come back for me yet. I had done another nurse rental because of a second wave of COVID. I don't remember what the deal was, but essentially, December of 2020, I was running my house. I had a roommate at that time, I think. My one house is doing well. It's appreciated in value. I've got cash reserves again from paying people out, $80,000 in February of that year. And so I don't actually actively look for properties. And I just like to think that they'll fall into my lap and we'll just figure it out when it happens. Because that's kind of my entire life for all parts of it, for certain things. And I had that real estate agent call me. We'd stayed connected, like in the sense that if he called me, I'd answer his call. I hadn't discussed how I was upset with him for the first deal and just like how he started working for the seller. And that just seemed really shady to me after this experience I had with him. But it's always good to keep up your network. And in January of 2021, he called me to like do like we should see what your house is worth type thing. And I said, okay, great. And I said like, hey, I'm just curious. I'm just going to put it out there that I'm looking for another place that's a duplex, within 3 miles of downtown Denver, natural light. Just, like if you see anything, let me know. I don't like the Denver setups where you have to go through the backyard to get into the property and then you can like split it up and down. I'm not really a fan of those. So I was like, not really looking for something like that because there's tons of those in Denver. Well, a few. And I'm looking for something like my current setup where it's a full other access point, that type of thing. So then he was like, actually, I have this seller. So he has this guy that wants to sell his place. This real estate agent had found him a buyer before, but the buyer fell through. The whole property, which was 2 duplexes, is worth like $1.4 million, or that was the original offer was going to be for the 2 duplex, like 4 units. And then when the one unit the one side of the duplex, the renters got wind that he was trying to sell it, ended up, when that buyer fell out, bought their half from this, I'll call him an investor. And then the other half was just still open. Not technically for sale, not technically not for sale, but this guy, the real estate agent, he was going to represent him. So I was like, cool, give me the information so I can run the numbers. Where's the property? I'm going to go look at it. And so that's the case. So we started this kind of game, right, where you start to do your due diligence as a real estate investor, see what your property taxes are, what is he making for rents right now, what needs to be done on the property, how do I have to set it up? And all while talking to this real estate agent, things felt off. I didn't really enjoy working with him the first time because of the ending interactions I had with him. And so I was like, okay, I had a bottom line of what I was willing to pay for the property based on comps that I'm now good at doing. And he was trying to go above and beyond, and I didn't understand why. When he kept telling me that the bottom line for this seller was $700,000, he's willing to go to $700K for this one duplex in Denver. But my real estate agent kept telling me that I need to offer $750. And the things that started to feel off was that he kept saying that he was trying to represent me as the buyer, but then he kept saying that he was representing the seller. So I wasn't sure where his loyalties lied on that. And then he kept not bringing my offers to the seller. So I did like a whole comp thing. And I said, I'm willing to spend between $715 and $730 on this property, but no higher. And this is of course an off-market property, which is great. So it's always worth a little bit more. And he kept telling me that the seller won't go lower than 730. And it turns out he was actually just securing his commission, which as an agent, you are very much allowed a commission and do the work you need to do. But he kept telling me that the seller was going to pay him and the seller's bottom line was 700. So I just really didn't understand what was going on. So I'd actually walked away from the deal because I didn't have that cash. In Denver, at that time, you had to have cash above anything above 580, 560, I think is what it was. So I had to come up with essentially like 100 and however many thousands of cash to get this deal. And I didn't have it.
Yeah. And so it sounds like, just to be clear, you have like, basically it's a duplex split up, right? And so this is like half of a duplex that you're buying, but it's got 2 units on it. So it's probably not a legitimate duplex, but you could rent it out as a duplex. You see those all over everywhere. Is that right?
So no, it's actually a legitimate duplex with the ability to have a triplex on the property. It's a multifamily property zoned in Denver.
Okay then.
One address.
And so what is one address? Okay, that might be the issue because I think with a duplex, that 585 number is a little higher. But yeah, I know that you do. You hit the conforming loan limit, and then you have to bring in like an extra $100,000 or whatever. And that's obviously maybe you didn't have that. And so I guess. So again, this is such a big reason is like you need to make sure that you're working with a high quality real estate agent because if this guy's representing the buyer and the seller, he should have disclosed that to you. He can do that. And then he takes no sides. He just facilitates the transaction. And in Colorado, that's called transaction brokerage. But when he's representing you, you are his fiduciary. And so he needs to get that property for you at the lowest possible price so that you'll still get the property.
Yeah, I just want to add about the transaction broker or double ending. I think that as a buyer, it's not really in your advantage, right? So if you're seeing that that's happening, if you're not getting a huge discount for that, then it's really not worth it because the buyer doesn't really pay the commission. Yes, you're paying it in the total cost of the home, but it's really on the seller's side. And so you should have proper representation. So just for anybody listening or people that are real estate agents, like it is kind of dicey to double end a transaction. So in general, we just don't do it and refer it out.
Yeah. And like you said, you want someone on your team. If you're going to end up paying for it anyways, you want the person on your team. And as you said, he should be my fiduciary, meaning any offer I'm giving, he has to represent to the seller, and he wasn't. And I didn't find that out until I backed out of the deal. He started negotiating his commission with me, and I thought, why are you negotiating with me when you're working for the seller? I don't understand. So I said, I'm going to wash my hands of this. Everything feels way too complicated. Probably sounds complicated in my explanation. It was just this essentially terrible, something was weird. And so I backed out. And then he calls me and he goes, well, what could we do to get you back in here? And I said, give me the seller's number and I'm gonna have a call with him. That was a mistake because it turns out the real estate agent has been lying to me this entire time. So,
oh, shoot.
Yeah. So I called the seller. And it turns out this real estate agent had been lying about a lot of things. And I just basically went to the seller and said, here's my understanding. You want the property. You're willing to take the property at $700,000. You're willing to here's the property's condition. Here's the things you've done on it. Anything else I should know? I'm willing to do this deal, but everything's not making sense to me. And then he clarified some of the confusion I had. And it turns out that, of course, the real estate agent was kind of trying to work both ends, but never actually working for anyone or telling people the true nature of what's going on. So that's fine. The seller and I had agreed that no matter what, the agent should make some sort of commission for connecting us. And I actually called Craig and was like, what does that look like in Colorado? What would be fair to someone? The seller was trying to get me to give him $12,000, which was way too much money for someone who kept attempting to screw me over. But I knew that I had to bring him into the deal or else I wouldn't get this property. And so I ended up paying $707 for the property. I gave 1% of the deal to the real estate agent, which I think was very generous based on the way that he treated me after this, understandably. And he also... so I got it for $707 total.
And you paid the commission, it sounds, as the buyer.
Correct.
Okay. Wow, that is unraveling. And so I guess my question is how do you avoid real estate agents like this? Because he sounds kind of toxic, and I mean, there's plenty of them out there. He's definitely not a special case. And so, how would you go back and avoid this in the future?
Well, the second time I wanted to see if I was a crazy one. Maybe I'm just being greedy or overly cautious or something's going on and I really needed to check myself. So I called other agents to talk to them to be like, hey, is this a normal behavior? Is this something I should expect? And most people came back and said, this sounds a bit odd. I ended up actually finding out 2 of my friends worked at the same brokerage as him. And I called them to say, hey, if you were in his position, how would you have handled this? And it was very different than the way he did. So the way I would do it is do your due diligence by either, obviously interviewing other agents. Never go with the first person you talk to. Maybe that's the person you end up with, but it's not the person that you should for sure go with. Interview a couple people and do character references if you really want to. I feel like it's above and beyond. But finding out what type of person they are based on other people at their brokerage or whatever it is a really good way of protecting yourself.
Yeah, and I just want to say that off-market deals are dicey because a lot of times the sellers don't want to pay the commission, and so the agent does have to negotiate it, but he should say that. He should say, hey, we have to put my commission on here on the top of this price, so your price is this, but this is why. And that should all be laid out and clear. So I think it's just that he was trying to be too sneaky about it, and it didn't come over well.
Correct.
Yeah, one thing that I tell all of the agents on our team, and I think everything in real estate should be, is literally nothing should be a surprise in a real estate transaction, right? You shouldn't get to the closing table and be like, oh, what the heck is this, right? Or, whoa, you never told me that, right? Like, you need to set expectations and go above and beyond in your communication to make sure that everybody is on the same page, because that is where every single problem happens, is miscommunication, misunderstanding, or just not having that clarity.
Yeah. And from the buyer's perspective, if you're making a huge purchase like this, you start to get nervous no matter what, right? Everyone goes through buyer's remorse probably when you buy a huge property or you do this first thing. So you have to, as an agent from the buyer's perspective, is you really do have to walk them through each part and, like you're saying, be transparent, because the second someone's starting to feel something's off, they're going to go why is my representation feeling off? And that's gonna make the entire deal die.
For sure. I love that. So real quick, let's get into the the numbers on that too. What was your mortgage payment? What was the rent? What did that look like?
Yep. So for this one, the multifamily property found that halfway through getting financing. So financing looks different for that. So you have to put a certain percentage down, at least with the people I was working with. So I had to put 15% down on that one. So I think I ended up putting about, $90,000 on that property. The total purchasing price was $707,000. I got a 3% loan. Loan rates were going up again when I was buying it. So 3% total for 30 years, which is absolutely incredible. Rent at the time, the basement unit was renting for $1,795. So my total mortgage plus taxes and insurance was $3,000 a month, or is $3,000 a month, plus utilities on top of that. It's quite a large property. It's 2,800 square feet. And then the basement unit, walkout basement, is $1,795 a month plus 1/3 of utilities. And then upstairs, those tenants were moving out because I was moving in because it's my property. And I got the personal loan on that one. So I moved into upstairs and had to redo a lot of stuff upstairs. So I spent about $25,000 fixing up the house, new roof, flooring, painting, fixtures, and then I have to still redo the kitchen on it because it's a really ugly old kitchen. And it's a historical home. It's not actually deemed historical, thank goodness, but it was it's one of those really nice Victorian homes in Denver. So trying to keep with that aesthetic is really important while I'm fixing it up. So put about $24,000 into fixing it up. My renter wanted to leave, but he was awesome. He's now the person who helps me with my Airbnb. He moved upstairs, and then downstairs we started doing Airbnb rentals he's the owner of the Airbnb. And so the upstairs rents for $31.50 a month plus 2/3 of utilities. And then downstairs rents for long-term rental. I could probably get now with Denver pricing like $2,100 a month, but I do short-term, which makes a lot more than that.
Wow. So you're looking at between maybe $5,000 or $6,000 a month in rent on a $3,000 mortgage payment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's crazy. So you're making, so just out of 2 properties,
For
it
long
sounds
term.
like you're for long term, right?
Yeah.
It's
Short-term, it makes
just from
like
2
a lot more.
properties. Yeah. So just from these 2 properties, you're probably making what, $5,000-6,000 a month passively.
So correct. So right now between 2 properties, there's 2 short-term renters and 2 long-term renters right now on my properties. While I'm in Canada, but I live at one of them, but in one room with a roommate. I make on off months, so not peak months for Airbnb, I make between $3,000 and $5,000 a month. And then with Airbnb, I make between $9,000 and $12,000 a month in my pocket. So that's after all expenses are paid, plus a savings account and paying for cleaning and all that stuff.
Wow, the power of Airbnb in Denver.
Yeah.
And so I guess what do you think that property's worth now? You bought it at $700. Do you think it's worth? I'm sure it's appreciated.
Oh, it was worth a lot more when I bought it too. I was really haggling this deal. So when I bought it, when I was doing the comps, it was worth between $750 and like $800 fixed up. So now my guess is probably around $900,000. I actually need to go get the PMI removed so I can get an appraisal. Yeah, probably around $900,000. I know a unit down the street just went for like $1.4 million, and it had a 3rd small garage unit, and that was like its 3rd unit. So.
Boom. Love that. Okay, so real quick, we're going to have to get to the final part of our show soon, but you did drop kind of slyly be like, yeah, we threw in $80,000 as the down payment, $90,000 as the down payment. And this is the woman that was making $12,000 a year. And so how are you getting this $90,000? Is it just through the real estate investment in Airbnbs, or you have some secret pile of cash somewhere that we don't know about?
I grew a money tree. So there turns out there's these beans you can buy from Jack.
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
What's his number?
Yeah, exactly. I can't give it out. I require some money for that. So no, I actually upped my income at work. So I switched jobs. I decided to switch jobs. I got paid, since we're talking numbers, so I went from making $50,000 a year. I got a raise to 60, like 5. I was making less than all of my peers because I was fresh out of college, but literally would take on $1 million projects and fix things for other people because they were pretty bad. And they wouldn't give me a raise. So I switched companies and went to our competitor and started at $120,000 a year after that, plus bonus.
Wow.
So all of a sudden,
that's a big jump.
I went from, yeah. Mm-hmm. So I went, that was in July of 2020. 2019. So I was actually able to start saving money. That's how I saved up that first $80,000, was really increasing my income. And then was able to save that next year for the next property. So W-2 job.
And she was house hacking. So, she wasn't paying much, if anything, for rent. And then she had a roommate once her partner left. So that was probably bringing in extra that was helping out. Yeah, great.
You got it. Yeah. My housing was zero. And then I got to make money on top of that.
Just solving for that formula, right? Raise your income, reduce your expenses. And now hit financial independence. And it sounds like, with your spending habits, it sounds like you're at financial independence. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes. So I am technically at financial independence. So I guess I am at financial independence. I'm not at retired part, right? So I have a partner who I'm trying to bring to the United States, and he can't work. And so because I only started working a few years ago, I am someone who wants that money in some brokerage accounts because they were quite empty a few years ago. So that's my goal now, is just to set myself up that I have multiple paths in case something happens, and I don't have just to rely on real estate only. And I'm going to continue working because I love what I do.
That's
but
awesome.
Only for a couple of years, and then I'm out.
Yeah. That's awesome. No, I mean, congrats on all your success, right? I think it's so funny to just hear your story going from, right, like someone who's, coming to the United States, make almost nothing and just grow in the corporate space, grow with your investments. And now here you are. And so I was going to ask you where you're going next, but it sounds like you're just going to, continue to invest in index funds, maybe dabble in real estate, keep at your job for a couple more years. And once you and your partner are settled back here in the United States, you're going to start living your life.
Yeah, we have some big dreams for travel. Like I traveled the world, and so has he. He did a motorcycle trip from Vancouver to South America and back. And so like we're very adventurous. So we've got some things that we want to do, like go sailing and stuff. So the plan is to have a kiddo, maybe have another one, take advantage of mat leave, take advantage of W-2 and being able to get properties easy, because then I don't have to, qualify all that income from the properties. And like if another deal falls in my lap, I'll go for it. If not, we'll just sit pretty for 3-4 years and then move on.
Sounds amazing, Amberly. And I love your story, and thank you so much for sharing. Now we are going to head into our Final Four.
The Final Four.
But before we do you have any lasting words of wisdom for the audience?
Find a good real estate agent, people.
And you've got 2 right here. Ta-da.
Cough.
All right, Amberly, question number 1. What are you reading right now?
I am currently reading an advanced copy of Doc G's book, Taking Stock, which I'm really excited about. So far, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and if you guys don't remember, I was just going to say that, Craig. Jeez.
Sorry, Z. Great minds think alike, or what?
Yeah, totally. But
Something
anyway,
like
if you want to
yeah.
look back, Doc G was just on our show a few episodes ago, and we did a deep dive into his book and his philosophy. So it is a really good episode. Definitely check that out.
Yes, check out that episode. And Amberly's second question is, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I found this one really hard to answer. So one of the best pieces of advice that I follow is building the parachute on the way down. So life and things don't turn out the way that you think they will. Sometimes you should just take the leap and see what happens.
I love that advice.
Nice.
I think if you wait to be comfortable to like take the next step, you're never going to take that next step. 'Cause it's never a good time to have a baby, to travel the world, to move, to start investing in real estate, right? It's never a good time to do something different. And so you just got to do it and then figure it out. I love that.
And question number 3, what is your why?
My why of 5, if that's what we were really asking about, or why of real estate, is I love connecting with people. This is my favorite thing in the world, is to, chat with people online, create communities in person, and that's why I do everything. I love being a landlord and an Airbnb host because I get to meet people from all over the world and make them comfortable in that small amount of time I get to have with them. And I feel that way about everyone in my life. So that's why I do everything that I do.
All right, Amberly, last semi-real question. If countries were to settle their differences with something other than war, what would it be?
Oh my God. Can I just tell you what came to my head and I'm really ashamed of it? Love.
Love? So how would that work? Would people just like do Woodstock all over again and like, yeah?
Yeah, there's lots of MDMA involved, guys. I don't know.
Yeah, just like rolling around in the mud, like, yeah.
I mean, honestly, MDMA would probably work. They should hold like sessions and have like people just kind of like creating the space and like, going back and forth and like processing their feelings. That would totally work. That's what's up.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, but for real, when I just thought of it for 2 more seconds, love wouldn't always be the answer. But I did hear that when you put women in charge of fixing territories and resources, they do a better job of men. So no offense to half the population out there. Maybe we should have women.
And we just lost half our listeners. Well, to all the men out there, I think you're doing a great job. Yeah.
It's fine, Craig. You're outnumbered. Just sit this one out, buddy.
Yeah. Before I say something that gets us to lose the other half. No. Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting. I think definitely like there's always different perspectives that men and women bring, and I think together they make great teams. So yeah, I think it would help, right? If there were more women leaders in the world, I can't imagine it would hurt. So.
Yeah. Agreed.
Well, Amberly, where can people find out more about you when you're not doing the love thing?
Yeah.
Settling between countries.
Yeah. While I'm not
Craig,
traveling
you're so
the
bad.
world. I am on Instagram at Amberly Grant. So AMBERLYGRANT. My website is amberlygrant.com. It's nice having a unique name because I get it for every platform like TikTok, which is Amberly Grant.
Woo!
Nice.
Yeah, go follow Amberly if you're interested to hear more about her journey. She's amazing. And Amberly, thank you so much for coming on. It was so good to see you. So good to hang out with you for the last hour, and we'll chat again soon.
Yeah, this is really fun. Thank you guys for all the questions and insights.
Yay.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. And that was Amberly Grant. Z, what did you think about Miss Amberly?
I thought her story was great. I find that sometimes I'm hearing stories from people that are just getting started that buy big properties because like 505 and over 700, those are big prices. But big also wins big. You know, so I am just impressed seeing like, yeah, you can make $3,000 a month on one property. Like that's so exciting and definitely shows the power of house hacking and Airbnb. So sometimes you got to like risk it to make it happen. But I love the boldness. Feeling excited about her.
Risk it for the biscuit. Another great thing about large properties is they appreciate a lot too, right? And so you see that, you know, she kind of underestimates how much her property is worth. I think it's probably worth well over 600. But she's got between two properties at least hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity, which in just a couple of years, right? Which again is like
so exciting.
more than a really good job salary, right? And sure, we've had some luck in the last few years, but still, you can't get lucky unless you buy. And so, you know, I think that's again Amberly, and I just love how she's not really care. She doesn't seem to care to like grow to 1,000 units or have millions and millions of dollars. She's like, nah, I'm like pretty content with like, you know, my like $7,000 to $12,000 a month. Me and my partner, they're having a baby. After they have their baby, they're gonna go travel and just kind of like live and enjoy life. And I just love that. So.
Yeah, I love when people have such good balance and such clarity about what they're trying to accomplish. I did want to point out that our episode 85 was the one that we had Doc G on. So if you guys want to go back and listen to that episode talking about his book, Taking Stock, that Amberly referenced, you can check it out there. Well, that is it for today. I actually want to put in a little plug. If you guys have not joined, I have a Facebook group called Airbnb Investing. Check us out. We've got about almost 800 members on there sharing advice about Airbnbs, and we have a meetup. We were talking about meetups in this episode, so I know that I and Craig host monthly meetups, and if you guys want to come out, how could they find out about your meetup, Craig?
Yeah, so our meetup is every Wednesday, every first Wednesday of the month from 6 to 9 p.m. at Blake Street Tavern. You can go to meetup.com and just look up House Hackers Meetup, Denver, Colorado, and we'll be the first one. Join the meetup, join the group, and we have meetups actually every single week. A different agent throws a meetup, but the big one is that first Wednesday every month, and so you'll be able to come to as many as you want and have all the fun and come meet your tribe.
Yeah, we can't wait to meet you in person. So as we ask at the end of every episode, if you guys haven't yet, please leave us a rating or review. Tell your friends, share this podcast. It helps us grow and bring cool guests and better content. So with that, we will see you next week.
See ya.
That's it for this episode of Investify. We hope that these nuggets of real estate wisdom lead to more savvy financial planning and a clearer path towards financial freedom. For more content like this, subscribe to the show at investify.com. Don't forget to leave a rating and share it with your friends. Together, we can transform more real estate newbies into successful and clever investors. Thank you so much for listening. See you on the next one.